My name is Gaijin Greg, and welcome to my 2.5-year update video for my Japanese immersion learning journey. And once again, I'm behind schedule. Life's been a little crazy, same as last time, but we'll talk about that a little later. And I've got a bit of a sore throat going, so please bear with me, guys. But as of the day of recording, I am at 945 days straight of studying Japanese, which is kind of crazy to think about when you really sit down and soak it in. And if you did miss my previous update videos, I've got them linked down in the description below, so definitely go check that out. And I think they're really a good documentation of my journey up until this point. But before we get any further into the nitty-gritty, let's take a look at my stats. So as you can see, I've got about 1,901 hours, which comes out to be just barely over 2 hours a day. And I'm still at my goal, but it is getting a little tight. So I probably need to have some days where I do a little bit more than 2 hours to kind of get a little bit more of a buffer. I think right now I've got like a 5-day buffer. If I didn't do Japanese, I would still be averaging 2 hours a day. But we want to be above that, so we have that cushion there. But as for the breakdown of what I've been doing for my Japanese time, you can see here I've got about 1,206 hours of listening, which is 63% of my time. I've got about 496 hours of vocabulary, 25% of my time, which I think is probably perfect. And then there's 133 hours of reading, which is 7% of my time. While I'd like to get that number up, I definitely made an improvement from last time, so I'm happy with that. And we've got 71 hours of grammar study, which has not changed at all since last time. I haven't done any explicit grammar study, which is perfect. And then I've got a little sliver here of pronunciation, which is about 18 hours or 1% of my time. While I do still track my stats on Polylogger like you just saw there, I actually started also using the Refold app for time tracking, and it's a really nice, slick app that I think is great and has kind of a little bit of a sense of community there. It actually is still in beta, but I'll leave a link down in the description below so that you can see how to download it on your phone. And I'll also leave another link that will show you how to transfer your existing time tracking data into that Refold app if you'd like. And I really can't recommend enough tracking your time. It's one of the most important parts of language learning because it forces yourself to keep yourself accountable, and seeing that growth and knowing that you really are putting the time in is really important to your language learning journey, in my opinion. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk a bit about the content I've been using to immerse. And we'll start, as always, with the podcasts, and really not much has changed here at all. The only new podcast I started was the Yuyu no Nihongo Podcasto, and it's pretty run-of-the-mill intermediate learner podcast, and I'm always looking for any native podcast recommendations. So if anybody has found anything interesting, definitely leave that down in the comments below. So I've watched a couple anime over the past 6 months, and the first one was Yokoso Jitsuryoku Shijo Shugi no Kyoshitsu, or Classroom of the Elite, and that is a mouthful in Japanese, and I just cannot pronounce it to save my life. But I watched like the first season of the show within 6 months of starting my immersion learning, and honestly watching it now, it was a world of difference. There's still a lot of like really hard segments, but my enjoyment now was like 10 times more than before, and it's a super fun show, and I really cannot wait for season 4. The next one that I watched was Charlotte. And I actually watched this in college, and I just remember nothing about it except for I really enjoyed it, and I'm actually very glad I decided to watch it again. It's a pretty cool show about high schoolers gaining like supernatural powers and this student body organization trying to protect these students from being taken advantage of. I also watched Historia no Hitorigoto, or Apothecary Diaries, and the premise of this anime really intrigued me, and I thought it was going to be like one of my favorite shows. I thought it was going to have like Frieren vibes, but honestly it just did not do it for me. And like, I think some of that may have been because the language and vocabulary was a little odd because it was in a historical China setting, but I basically dropped this one after 9 or 10 episodes, and I don't plan on going back. For like dramas or reality TV, I had quite a few that I watched over this past 6 months, and the first one was Hatsukoi, or First Love. And I honestly love this show. It's just one of those shows that has like a current and past plot line that are revealed in tandem with one another, and it follows high school sweethearts and kind of shows the ups and downs they faced as they grew up. And I don't want to say too much more to spoil anything, but you should definitely watch it. And also Utara's music was just like the chef's kiss on this show. The next one that I watched was Itazura na Kiss, or Mischievous Kiss, Love in Tokyo, and I kind of just randomly started this show on Crunchyroll while my Netflix account wasn't working, and honestly fell in love with it. It revolves around a high school girl moving in with her crush through a series of extenuating circumstances, and honestly, it's just like hilarious and like ridiculously over the top, and I think this might be a great show for people who are really brand new to Immersion, because things are really overacted and super dramatic, and the context clues will really help make things comprehensible. Another show that I watched was Saiyai, or Dearest in English, and it's kind of a murder mystery detective thriller through and through, and it has a really interesting cast of characters, and I think it did a great job of throwing in dashes or hints of romance and family drama without it taking over the entire show. It did take a while to get going, but this one definitely kept me on the edge of my seat, and honestly ended in a way that I really was not expecting at all. I continued watching Shinya Shokudo, or Midnight Diner Tokyo Stories. I finally got around to finishing this show in like the final 2 seasons, which were called Tokyo Stories on Netflix. It's just a classic, easy to watch show that can honestly be surprisingly profound for what it is. One reality show that I decided to watch was Ai no Sato, or Love Village, and this reality show kind of puts together older singles in an abandoned traditional Japanese home and has them live together and work together to restore it to good, proper condition. And if the couples form, they get to leave the show together and kind of begin their life as a couple. Overall, it was pretty entertaining and had some funny moments. I'm still a little skeptical of how real it was. I think there may have been some planted actors in there, but it kind of made it even more fun at times. But nothing will really match the vibes of Terrace House for me, but I'm always kind of looking for that next reality show that might have similar vibes. One show that did not have Terrace House vibes was O Kami-chan ni Damasarenai, or Is She the Wolf? And I am a sucker for reality TV, guys, and I'm a sucker for cheesy reality TV, but the season of this show that's on Netflix is a little too fake for me. Like, the premise of the show also didn't even make a lot of sense to me. Like, I'm not even gonna try to explain it, because I could rant for like 5 to 10 minutes on how it makes zero sense. Like, trying to explain this show to my wife, she was like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. But for some reason, if cinematography and scenery is like your thing, like this show is an 11 out of 10 for like just showing cool stuff in Japan and like cool beauty of Japan. And that totally made it worth watching. So I can recommend it because, yeah, just because of that. So I actually watched my first couple movies in Japanese, and the first one was, this is another long name here, so bear with me, Yome Ichinen no Boku ga Yome Hannen no Kimi to Deyatta Hanashi. And in English, it's called Drawing Closer, and those names are like nothing alike. And the Japanese name is very descriptive of what the movie actually is. And if you like tearjerker movies, this is for you. And it follows a male and female student who have a year and half a year left to live respectively. And the story of them finding like solace in one another was very heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time, but I really recommend it if this type of movie is your thing. The other movie I watched was Chihiro-san, or Call Me Chihiro in English, and I'm just gonna be absolutely brutally honest with you guys. I despise this movie, and it just felt very pretentious, and I saw so many reviews saying it was great and the director had a really good track record, but I found it mind-numbingly boring, and I'm just impressed I was able to make it through the whole two and a half hour runtime of this movie. Like, that honestly is impressive to me, and it just felt like it was trying so hard to be profound, but maybe I was missing something. But all I can say is, in my opinion, you gotta stay away from this movie. Like I mentioned earlier, I have been reading a little bit more, and the first thing I started reading was Konbini Ningen, or I think it's Convenience Store Human. The English name might be Convenience Store Woman, but this is actually like the first novel I've tried to read in a long time, and I'm really enjoying it so far, about halfway through, and I do plan on finishing it. But it's about a woman who's been working at a convenience store for almost like 20 years, and her dealing with societal norms and pressure and not really conforming to those. And even though they're very different stories, it kind of gives me some like Catcher in the Rye vibes at time, which is one of the few books from like the high school required readings that actually piqued my interest. Another thing that I've been reading is Anata ga shite kurenatte mo, and that's Even If You Don't Do It in English. And honestly, shout out to Hypothetical Tiger for this recommendation. This is a great manga, and definitely go check him out after this video if you haven't already. He's one of the GOATs out there living the dream in Japan right now. So this story revolves around two couples that are in sexless marriages and how they try to navigate that. And I've only got 2 more volumes to go before I'm finished with the whole series, and I found it honestly just like fascinating so far. The characters have made me so frustrated at them, but also like I feel bad for them at the same time. And honestly, a piece of like media has not made me feel that way in a long time. And I haven't done any substantial gaming or played any new games in Japanese lately, so no updates there. Vocabulary, not much has changed since the last video, but I do have some more things I want to discuss about that later. Grammar, like I mentioned, I've done no explicit grammar studies since the last update. And pronunciation, I did end up finishing Dogen's Japanese phonetics course and haven't done any dedicated practice since then. But let's get how I'm personally feeling about my Japanese right now. So life has just been so busy, and my daughter turned 1, we've had multiple weddings, I lost a grandparent unfortunately, we had a family vacation with a baby, I started a new job, and honestly just so much more. And all of that has definitely made it a lot harder to set aside time and dedicate it to Japanese. And during this time, I've often relied on immersion while in the car, whether I'm driving or a passenger, and just trying to get as much immersion in while I've been traveling as possible. But this has become actually a little bit harder now because I'm going places with a child that demand some of my focus and attention. I think there was like a month stretch where it definitely felt like the quality of my immersion was slipping. And I also had a hard time hitting my 2-hour goal many days during this last 6 months. But I did keep going, however, and I do still find so much enjoyment and satisfaction from this hobby. I'm proud that I'm still going. And I think it really goes to show that you can really surprise yourself with what you can accomplish. And if you're dedicated and accountable to yourself and your goal, it really is amazing. And if you're out there working hard on your language learning journey, especially the parents and working adults out there, you can do it. One of my goals from the last video is to find a more sustainable life and language learning routine. And I feel like I've definitely been able to do that, so I wanted to mention it in this video and kind of follow up. And I recently got and switched to a new job that allows me to work from home more, and this saves me honestly hours every week on commuting and wasted time, frankly. And it's allowed me to, one, spend more time with my family outside of work and spend more time working out and improving my physical health, and finding more ways to easily fit immersion into my daily schedule without burning out. So it's been amazing, and I really especially think that physical health component has been key. I think if you're not taking care of yourself physically, it definitely becomes harder to be mentally sharp and prepared to do stuff like immersion. So on top of that, the other good thing is that the job itself seems like it's going to be much more interesting and fulfilling than my previous one. And I think just the difference of how I feel now versus how I felt at the 2-year update video is just like night and day. I'm super optimistic about everything going forward, and I feel like it's just made my life all around better. So now it's time to really start getting into the nitty-gritty of the language itself. And I've started to slowly realize how slow I've been going with sentence mining and adding new vocab to my Anki, and I'm really just torn on how I want to handle things. And I know some of you guys have been in my comment section in the past videos saying I'm going too slow, I should set a goal to mine more vocab words daily, and you may be somewhat right, but I do still feel like I would have burned out trying to force myself to do like 20 new mined cards a day. I just think sometimes hitting that arbitrary goal is hard. Like there are some days where I'll immerse for, you know, my 2 hours and find a gajillion new words. And there's some days where it's like I found literally like 2 new words. And so having that goal is sometimes hard, and there's other days where I'm not immersing in front of my computer where it's convenient for me to make cards. So I'm still trying to figure that out. I think I'm gonna kick it up into gear here now that I've got a little bit more of a sustainable routine, but it does feel like I could really keep boosting my comprehension and language ability with more vocab. And I know I have that arbitrary 10,000 word goal before I start my output practice. Currently I'm at 8,600 cards, so I only need about 1,400, but you know, at my current pace, that's not super fast. So I'm gonna try to kick it up into gear here and get things done. I almost kind of wish I just had a pre-made deck that went all the way to 10,000 that was still relevant, and I know that's not the most effective way to do things, or at least what most people believe the most effective way to do things. Part of me wants to take advantage of like my pretty good like rote memorization skills. For whatever reason, I'm good at that, and I feel like I could, you know, get those primed and ready to go and ready to be acquired through immersion faster than I could sentence mine stuff. But I do get like the relevancy and the memories built while sentence mining stuff do hopefully form those stronger connections. But if I do go with like a 20 word a day goal, you know, until I reached my 10,000 card limit, that'd be like only a 70-day push, which I think would be actually pretty manageable if I took it just one day at a time and I could do it in a healthy way. So we will see if I go for the 70-day push. I think as of right now, I'm thinking it's just going to be my hard goal to get 10,000 before the 3-year mark, and not necessarily in the arbitrary, you know, 20 card a day mark. So we'll talk about the goals at the end again here. But one last thing I've kind of noticed is that if I'm focusing too hard on finding new words, it's often making my like comprehension of my immersion worse, because I'm literally just like sitting here locked in like, where's a new word? Like, please show up. And if it doesn't, you know, I wasn't really paying attention. I was just scanning for new words. So maybe it's because my active brain is just working too hard. So I don't know. I don't know what that really means. I'll let you guys decide. But yeah, I think that's about all my thoughts for kind of Anki and vocab cards and where I want to go there. I am definitely still in the intermediate plateau. I'm in the thick of it, and I probably still will be for a while. But I think the good news is there's less and less days where I feel like I just randomly understand nothing or don't understand a lot, and now it seems a lot more dependent on the domain. So if I'm consuming slice of life content, for example, things are very easy and I need very few to no lookups. But if I'm watching something with a bunch of medical terminology, things can get hard very quickly. And Some things in medical shows I just let roll over me, because even in English, like, I don't know what half the medical mumbo jumbo really means. So I think that's just one example, but there are some areas where I'm better than others. And I typically prioritize just enjoyment over everything intentionally, because I don't want to force myself to explore other domains that I'm not interested in. But maybe that ties a bit into, you know, my sentence finding and vocabulary. If I do go to some of these new domains, there's a lot more opportunities to get new vocabulary. I feel very ready to begin speaking and practicing output, and hopefully I hit my arbitrary goal before that 3-year mark, and I'll have an update to share with you guys at or before the 3-year update video. And my plan is to actually document my first time speaking Japanese to share with you all, and I'll probably do a conversation with a Japanese tutor for this. And I also think recording this would be really cool, and to kind of document the progress I make from my first time speaking and outputting to kind of further down the road after I've hopefully improved a lot. I think one of the reasons I really think I'm ready is that I've been having like a lot of random dreams in Japanese, like a lot more than usual. Like, I have had dreams in the past, but it seems like almost every other night I'm dreaming in Japanese and not in English. So I feel like that's maybe a subconscious message that I'm ready to start using Japanese to communicate and not just to consume content. And I'm not really nervous to start outputting per se, but I think there's definitely this weird sensation going on in my brain right now. I have a hard time describing it, but I think because I've like really only heard Japanese in real life a couple of times, that it almost doesn't feel real to me. And it's because I live in the Midwest of America, but sometimes I almost get that feeling. And I forget that it's like actually a real living, breathing language that has over 100 million native speakers. And I know this sounds crazy, guys, but instead I kind of just see it as a subject of immersion in my immersion language. And I really truly am, when I start speaking, excited to hopefully dispel this feeling and start using the language for myself. And I know it will definitely be a new set of challenges, and it will break me out of my input only routine that I've grown quite comfortable with, but in truth, I think that's really a good thing. So let's set some goals for our next check-in at the 3-year mark, and we're going to keep it real simple and straightforward for these. So I'm going to continue to prioritize my family, be a good father and husband, and this is just honestly a static goal for the rest of my language learning journey and the rest of my life, honestly. Goal number 2 is reach 10,000 Anki vocab cards. And goal number 3 is to speak Japanese for the first time and begin practicing output. It's as simple as that. So that about wraps things up for this update videos. Like I said, I will be uploading a video of my first time speaking Japanese for either my 3-year update video or for before that. So if you are looking forward to that, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell icon down below to get notified when I upload the next video. If you guys do have any reading content recommendations or advice for practicing output and speaking, let me know down in the comments below. Until then, I'll see you in the next one.